What are the biggest learnings? And how did you put this Akash Teer? How did that evolve? And how was it so effective during Operation Sindoor?
It was known that India will strike. It was only the time, magnitude, area, and methodology was not known. That was matter of conjecture. So the IACCS of Indian Air Force, Akash Teer of Indian Army, and Trigun of Indian Navy all got integrated. So therefore, any incoming threat was able to be countered by the most effective weapon, whether it is in the Air Force domain or the Army domain or in the Naval domain.
As someone who's played such a key role in Akash Teer, was it like a vindication of sorts for you to see your system working?
Absolutely,
to neutralize
absolutely,
threats?
absolutely.
Do you think that Akash Teer, Trigun, IACCS, these are actually forerunners of the kind of jointmanship that India should be putting into place?
There are large number of activities which are happening over a period of time where a single entity cannot do the full justice to the threat, to the challenge, and the other entity has to also play its part. And it is because of that the Akash Teer was not conceived today when the theaterization has suddenly taken the front stage.
We are seeing now post-op Sindhur, multiple platforms being acquired. Is there a problem here in the sheer diversity of platforms that's been acquired, and is there a need to standardize platforms?
To a reasonable period of time, I was of the propaganda of this idea that there should be a universal system.
Right.
But as I thereafter started learning about the systems what we had purchased in India or elsewhere, we realized that one gun or one missile or one combination cannot address the multiple kind of threats.
How hopeful are you of DWs replacing guns? You think it will replace guns altogether, or will it only augment them?
The concept is good, but to get that kind of energy to destroy targets at longer ranges, it becomes physically huge challenge.
Give us a sense of what are the kind of threats that we are going to face in the next decade, 2 decades, that make a program like the Sudarshan Chakra so important for India's defense. Hello and welcome to the Sandeep Unnithan Show, your weekly dose of defense, geopolitics and much more. Today I am privileged to have on my show Major General Ashok Kumar. He is the Director General of the Center for Joint Warfare Studies, or CENJOS. That's the think tank driving integration amongst all three services. It's under the Headquarters Integrated Defense Staff, HQIDS. We are going to talk about a lot more than just integration. We're going to talk about air defense, Operation Sindoor, the road ahead, and of course, Sudarshan Chakra. General Kumar, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much.
I must ask you, General Kumar, because you are at heart an air defense gunner, and today we're looking at the revival of AD guns the world over because of the drone threat, because of the loitering munitions threat. You're seeing AD guns coming back in a big way. Give us your understanding, your appreciation of the threat posed by drones and how AD guns can meet that threat.
Okay, you have raised a very, very pertinent issue. When Operation Sindoor happened, India made a mark that despite large number of drones which were launched by Pakistan, including the Chinese drones and the Turkish drones in larger numbers, air defense guns provided a wall to the entire western border. Of course, there were other systems also which played a critical role, but the air defense guns played a very, very pivotal role.
Right.
Now, this has not happened just in its normal evolution.
Right.
It has happened because the threat had changed. Initially, the air threat was primarily from the conventional aircraft. So, the world over, there were AD guns to neutralize them. And these guns were trying to fire ahead of the target, which happens in case of all the moving targets. You have certain aim of you fire ahead of the target so that by the time target reaches the point of impact, your round is also there. That was the basic philosophy. But the air defense guns had a major challenge. So they had a very, very low SSKP, single shot kill probability. If you have a lower SSKP, it means the probability of the aircraft getting hit will be, accordingly very, very low.
Right.
So to compensate that, initially, as against a single barrel gun, the trend came up with having twin barrel guns, multi barrel guns. In addition to that, they went in for the high rate of fire. Like in case of L-70, you have 240 to 300 rounds per minute. But once you come to the JDU twin barrel guns, the rate of fire of both the guns put together goes anything to the close of 2000 rounds per minute. In case of Shilka, it goes to 4000 rounds per minute. So the volumetric fire added to the some deficit of the SSKP, but not substantially. Thereafter, the gun system started getting better quality of optical sights, IR devices, and they also started getting high quality of radars. They became, radar controlled guns in number of cases. So their potency increased substantially. While this was happening in the domain of air defense gun, the aerial vector was also changing in a big way. As against the conventional speed of 200 meter per second to 250 meter per second by the normal aircraft, they went beyond 300 meter per second to 400 to 500 meter per second. In addition, they were able to launch their weapons, the rockets, bombs, and the missiles from the aerial platforms much before they came into the range of the guns where the guns were deployed. So that is to say that they developed the standoff capacity.
Right.
So the guns started becoming redundant to some extent because of this projectile of the threat developing. So therefore, the world over they started looking at this threat and they went in for the missiles development. Air defense missiles, came into the being. Now, air defense missiles, on one hand, address the challenge of the SSKP. They had a higher SSKP, anything going to more than 90%, 96% and beyond. But the prerequisite with them was that unless they lock on the target, they cannot fire. So if they cannot lock on, it is as good as having nothing. Whereas in case of guns, though the SSKP was low, but you can always fire. There was no restriction of the gun not getting fired. The moment you press the trigger, the gun will fire. So therefore, guns could fire, missiles could fire effectively in case they could fire, and at longer ranges. They had various, permutations and combinations from shoulder-fired missiles to the long-range missiles to radar-controlled missiles going to hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. So therefore, the new trend came because these both shortcomings or the capabilities became complementary to the defender.
So that's how the gun missile.
So therefore,
was
the
born.
gun missile system came into being. Even in India, we imported Tunguska system from Russia as the first gun missile system. And if you today see the trend all over, it is more aligned to the gun missile system, so that missiles have longer ranges, a higher SSKP, so they engage the aerial target first. And in any case, even if the number of targets are more, or if there are saturation attacks, then if they come closer, then the guns are able to take on in that way. So that is how the whole air threat envelope was happening. But nobody was knowing and anticipating that drones, which were primarily used in terms of the marriage video photography and things like that, will change into battlefield totality. It happened in Nagorno-Karabakh. Then Russia, Ukraine, we are happening. Every day they are changing. We have seen in case of Operation Sindoor, and it is the threat world over. Because the drones per se, they are not costly. They can be prepared on the go. They can have the capacity by swarming a large number of aircraft to be destroyed. In fact, there was a conference long time back, I'm not able to recall the year and time, when Elon Musk told clearly that the era of the aircraft is over.
Yes.
While the era of aircraft may not be over to that extent, it has got certain distinct advantages. Which cannot be replaced by the drones in whatever way we go. But then definitely the air vector has to take this development in totality. Now, once this development has come and this is being practiced in a big way by the countries because of low cost, because of its democratization, the weaker countries also have got that. It is not that if you are a stronger only then you will win. Even a weaker country can take you to the task. That's what happening in Ukraine,
Yeah.
in against Russia. So this kind of threat, just imagine a drone may be costing something like thousands of bucks in certain cases, the smaller drones. And the missiles, if they are launched, they see the crores and crores getting wasted.
So the cost is asymmetry.
The
That's
cost
brought in,
asymmetry is
yeah.
one aspect. Secondly, these smaller drones have got very low radar cross section area, so they cannot be detected itself. If they cannot be detected, they cannot be locked down. If they cannot be locked down, the missile cannot be launched. So missiles for smaller drones have become almost ineffective. Therefore, that's what you brought out. The era of air defense guns have written, because because of their volumetric fire, they can fire volume of fire, and they can destroy the number of drones, and cost benefit analysis wise it is worth it.
Right. But I was, while you were talking about that, so during Op Sindoor, right, there's this book by Major General Bakshi called Red Lines Redrawn on Sindoor, where he mentions in one part where this has an impact, what you just mentioned, the volumetric fire has an impact on what he calls war stamina and stocking estimates, that you had basically catered for a certain level of ammunition for AD guns, but that was premised on aircraft and loitering munitions possibly, but not so much on these swarm drones. And he writes that even after readjustments, 30 days of stocks would have been practically exhausted in 3 or 4 days. And therefore, you need to reassess the stocking of ammunition. Do you see that as a problem, as a danger, that you need to now cater for very large amount of ammunition to handle these drone swarms?
I have little disagreement with that logic because of two reasons. Firstly, the kind of situation which happened during Operation Sindoor,
Right.
it is not likely to be repeated in this similar manner. It can be intensified, it can be with lesser intensity, anything could happen. So we cannot predict that. But normally, when you do the stocking, you do that kind of stocking for all guns which are there in inventory.
Right.
Whereas when firing is taking place, all your guns are not firing.
Right.
So, and even the enemy's aerial attack, it doesn't get distributed evenly throughout the border.
Right.
It has also has got an aim to look at. And so the air defense threat is not going to be managed the way he has conceived, because what to my mind he has looked at the conventional stocking vis-a-vis the current threat, but the current threats are not going to be managed by the guns alone. There is a huge research which is going on. There have been trials and successful trials of the high energy weapons, the
Yes.
HPM weapons, the EW weapons, which are being utilized in a big way to neutralize this drone and aerial threat.
Jammers, primarily.
The jammers,
yes.
Absolutely. So it is not that for all kind of drones we have to do the kinetic action alone. So the kinetic action by the air defense guns combined with the non-kinetic action by the electronic warfare means the high energy weapons, the soft kill options, they are going to complement, and therefore the requirement of munition will not be as much as is being made out to be.
Right.
However, it is true till the time we are able to perfect those options
That architecture,
adequately,
right.
we have to factor the ammunition in adequate numbers. That
Right.
cannot be denied, because the rate of fire of all the air defense guns, especially the JU-23, Shilka, or any other newer systems which you are looking at, the rate of fire is very high, and therefore even if they fire for a lesser duration, the ammunition expenditure is high. And therefore, if you see besides our effort to indigenize the weapon systems, we are investing heavily on indigenizing the ammunition also,
Right.
so that the requirement of scaling up during the conflict can be done without any loss
Surge
of life.
capacity, yes.
Its capacity can be
Right.
increased.
So I think the ammunition, the Indian Army has indigenized more than 90% of
Absolutely.
the
In fact,
ammunition.
there are only few munitions which are yet to be indigenized, and even in those categories, we are working in the mission mode. And I'm sure within 1 to 2 years, you will be sure of 100% munition getting produced in India by its own companies.
100%
100%.
air defense
Because the
munitions,
government has also taken multiple measures. What happens? Let's say suppose you are a businessman, you have established an assembly for manufacturing facility. Now, the current norm is that there's a requirement, you put your bid, and if you are a L1 bidder, then you get the contract. Now, once you get a contract for 1 year, there is no surety that you will remain L1 in the next year, because the contracts are normally done on yearly basis. Government has realized this need, that if they have to develop the indigenous capability, they have to break this approach, and that approach has already been broken. So those munitions where there is a critical indigenous need, the orders are being given for 10 years in one go.
Oh,
That kind of government has already been made that deviation, so that anybody who is investing in infrastructure, making and sustaining the assembly lines,
right.
can sustain it, this thing. The physical delivery of munition may be taken on the yearly basis, the payment may be made by yearly basis, but there is assurance. So therefore that becomes a win-win. So because of this mission mode adoption by the government, I'm sure in the next 2 to 3 years maximum, we will have all the munitions getting produced in India.
That's a very important breakthrough. And while we always look at guns, we forget that it's actually ammunition that really matters a lot. You can have all the guns, if you don't have ammunition, it's useless. But coming back to Operation Sindoor, General Kumar, what are the biggest learnings? And how did you put this Akash Teer game changer, if you can use that word, for this AD system? How did that evolve, and how was it so effective during Operation Sindoor?
So if you see, when Pahalgam happened, based on our earlier responses of surgical strike, and thereafter the Balakot strike, and thereafter the statement by the Honorable Prime Minister, it was known that India will strike. It was only the time, magnitude, area, and methodology was not known. That was matter of conjecture. So what was done by Pakistan? Pakistan mobilized its entire forces on its western borders to the Indian border. They beefed up the line of control and IB area, because they were anticipating the extent of the response will be much beyond the Balakot strike. So they were preparing that way. Frankly speaking, India did not mobilize its troops per se for the ground battle. Of course, since on line of control we remain deployed for perpetuity, we have the arms, ammunition, everything, entire infrastructure in place. So that in any case remains. But what we did, we deployed our air defense resources on the entire western border.
Right.
Right from northernmost with beyond Punch to down to run of Kutch. So all air defense guns were guns, missiles, and even S-400 of the Air Force and Air Force resources. Navy air defense resources, they were deployed in the sea, but not on the western border of the conventional ground forces. So entire wall was created, as per the deployment. Now, when you deploy the air defense guns, before fire, you have to know whether you are firing on own asset or you are firing on the enemy asset. So there has to be an identification of friend or foe, IFF. So the air defense, the Air Force has got the IACCS, with which it has integrated all the radars, and it is able to distinguish which is the enemy's aircraft and which is our O's, and only the ones which are declared those of enemy, they are the fired, and then the system information is passed. Now, air defense, army air defense has got the Akash Teer. Akash Teer was developed when I was DDG concept in DG Info system posted here in Delhi. So they have an air defense vertical, and they were pursuing Akash Teer.
This was in the 2000s, early 2000s.
Maybe later. In fact, this is it fructifies somewhere around 2012-13 time frame. Okay. the work was going on, but that is where the Akash Teer is not a weapon.
Right.
Akash Teer is a control and reporting system which got thereafter integrated with the ISCCS. And then similarly, Navy has got a CNR system known as Trigun for controlling of their air defense resources for the similar purpose. So the ISCCS of Indian Air Force, Akash Teer of Indian Army, and Trigun of Indian Navy all got integrated. So therefore, any incoming threat was able to be countered by the most effective weapon, whether it is in the Air Force domain or the Army domain or in the naval domain. So therefore, we were able to optimize our resources best and in the most effective manner. I don't know whether you have seen the live firing of the air defense guns which happened during Operation Sindoor. There were a lot of, the rounds with the tracers,
Yeah.
which were, flowing
Yes.
all over. Now, the tracers also have got a very, very important impact. If you search on the internet, you'll find there is an interview by a US pilot who undertook sorties during Gulf War One on the was the F-16 fighter pilot. And since the adversaries didn't have the kind of missiles, they were able to fire the guns having the tracers.
Right.
Invariably, majority of the cases, AD guns have the tracers,
Yes.
certain percentages.
Every fourth round, fifth round. is-
That depends on the type of weapons,
Right.
and that also depends on your policy as to what sequence you want to build, because except the tracer component, everything else is same. It is also a HE round. So what he said in the review that they were terrorized because of the seeing the tracer rounds flying in front of their eyes. So when you say a threat visible, then psychologically you are affected more adversely. If I put a knife here in front
Yes.
of you, that will have more damaging impact. As against that, even if a nuclear missile has been launched to destroy both of us, we are not seeing, not knowing, we are happy about it because we are unaware about that.
Unaware, right.
So those tracers, create this kind of psychological impact for the high-end targets. At the same time, they have been also put basically. They guide also by the firer to adjust their subsequent fire. Let's say they indicate that that whether you are firing short of the aircraft or ahead of aircraft, so you do the minor adjustment manually also so that you get the hit. So that is how the tracers story took place. And we had different kind of resources of Pakistan deployed, of the aircraft and things like that. And we also had the plans to destroy their entire terrorist infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we also used number of resources there. But their predominant aerial threat came from the drones. They had the Turkish drones also. They had the Chinese drones also. They had developed some kind of their own drones based on their contract with the Turkey long time back.
Right.
And so those came in larger numbers. And they were primarily taken by the air defense guns. In fact, air defense is a concept, is first to get mobilized during the war, because you are worried that the air defense, the aerial threat must protect your people and your resources, and before the resources get mobilized. But somewhere along the line, because of number of things keep happening, it had not gained that kind of preeminence in the people's mind as it got during Operation Sindoor. So frankly speaking, Operation Sindoor, AD has not got any new credibility. It has restored its credibility, which is due to this.
Right.
So that is very, very important to
But
understand.
as someone who's played such a key role in Akash Teer, was it like a vindication of sorts for you to see your system working?
Absolutely,
to neutralize
absolutely, absolutely. Akash Teer was one of the systems where DG Info Systems, as well as the user as the Air Defense Directorate,
Right.
the AD branch here in Army Headquarters, they both worked in a unison, and therefore the project fructified in a in a manner it is implementable. So you can see the Akash Teer in any case is functioning the Air Force. Air Force is a larger partner of the air defense. They are responsible for the air defense of the country, and Army is in support of that effort. That is how the complementarity is the way
So
things happen.
Akash Teer basically handles the lower tier of the threat, which is 0 to
No. Akash
10
Teer,
or even
no.
beyond.
Akash Teer has got nothing to do with the tier of threat.
Right.
Akash Teer is a software which utilizes the inputs from the radars
Right.
and injects also the inputs of IACCS and decides on which is own asset and which is that of the adversary.
Right.
So it has got no altitude limitation.
Right.
It is beside the point that the air defense per se, is responsible to a certain amount of altitude, and beyond
Yes.
that, it is of the Air Force.
Air Force, right.
That is a separate issue. But Akash Teer and ISCCS as a concept and in their functionality, they
They're basically
function in all
systems, they're networks.
They are systems and networks. They distinguish they take the inputs from radars. Because in AD you'll find there are integral air defense radars also, getting the input of your aerial platform. Plus Air Force has got its own radars. They
Yes.
get the input from ISCS. ISCS and Akash they inject. So their information exchange takes place, and the Air Force has got the priority right to declare particular target as own or enemies, and based on then the systems are activated.
So you also head CENJOS, which I mentioned is the Tri-Services think tank. So do you think that Akash Teer, Trigun, IACCS, these are actually forerunners of the kind of jointmanship that India should be putting into place?
Absolutely. See, invariably, we feel that the jointness and integration is going to take place only when the integrated theater commands come. But there are large number of activities which are happening over a period of time where a single entity cannot do the full justice to the threat, to the challenge, and the other entity has to also play its part. And it is because of that the Akash Teer was not conceived today when the theaterization has suddenly
Right.
taken the front stage. So these things and many more other things are jointness, integration. In fact, if you see the tenor of General Chauhan, it was focused. Larger role was on integration and jointness happening, because then the once you adopt to the theaterization, it becomes something which you have in an implementable form.
Right.
Now you see we have two active adversaries, China and Pakistan. We cannot create an integrated theater command without looking into these nuances, because battle can happen anytime. It may not happen at all. That is a separate thing altogether. But we have to be ready. So therefore, as and when the integrated theater commands come, they have to hit the ground running. They cannot be created and then experimenting to evolve. And therefore, all aspects related to their operational employment have to be thought through well in advance.
Right. Right. That's a very important point you've made, General Kumar. The fact that you can't have a pilot project by launching a theater command. You have to work all these things through. Do you think that is already happening?
No. See, there is a difference between this. Even if you have a pilot theater command, so you can't say it really pilot theater command in a conventional sense where the term pilot is used. Okay, in pilot, based on your inputs and this thing, you try out something physically, and based on its efficacy, then thereafter you go ahead. Or in case of integrated theater commands, the pilot has to be, also after the joint integration and all the inputs are going to be completed, because otherwise the pilot will also fail.
Right.
The only idea was, since it is a new concept, this is the biggest change which independent India is seeing, after independence. And therefore, it was thought that probably, I am not aware about this, frankly speaking. I am aware about what is available in the open source domain.
Right.
One way is that, all the three theater commands, one looking towards Pakistan, one looking towards China, one looking towards the maritime domain, are launched simultaneously. Could be that whatever has been achieved, the first one against Pakistan could be launched first, because once you are creating new organizations, there will be certain emergent challenges thereafter also, in spite of you having thought through certain things. They are also seen through, and then you go for the other two commands. So I do not know, honestly speaking, as to whether three are going to be launched, in what time they are going to launch, whether
Or
it is
whether they'll
going
be
to be one,
staggered.
one,
Right.
and then thereafter the rest. So
Right.
it's matter of conjecture. It
Right.
is in fact, you will be better informed than what I know about this.
Well, I wish that were the case, General Kumar. But coming back to AD guns, to the core of air defense artillery into which you were commissioned, we are seeing now post-op Sindoor, multiple platforms being acquired. There's talk of the K-30 Biho, the South Korean uh, guns that's being acquired. Tungushkas are coming in. The Pantsir is being acquired. Is there a problem here in the sheer diversity of platforms that's been acquired, and is there a need to standardize platforms based on like to do something for the services with AD, like you did with Akash Teer, with Trigun, and with IACCS?
Well, in my younger service, to a reasonable period of time, I was of the propaganda of this idea that there should be a universal system.
Right.
Because once you have a universal system, then the ammunition management, the its maintenance
Spares,
management, spares, and all those things get simplified.
Right.
But as I thereafter started learning about the systems what we had purchased in India or elsewhere, we realized that one gun or one missile or one combination cannot address the multiple kind of threats.
Right.
Like we had the SAM 6 and SAM 7s taken from Russia. So SAM 6 was the Quadrat weapon system, which was basically looking at the area air defense.
Right.
And the SAM 7s were the earlier version of the Igla missiles. They were giving
Point
the protection
defense.
to the they were initially giving the protection to the SAM 6 itself.
Right.
But subsequently, because of the paucity of resources and more number of UAVs coming, they were also employed in a standalone mode also.
Right.
Subsequently, the SAM 7s were replaced by Iglas, and SAM 6 was thereafter changed to Akash missile system, which DRDO has produced. But then came OSA-AK. When it came, we realized that why we are going for OSA-AK. But these weapon systems, they operate, even in case of the SAM 6 or the Akash, they operate a particular radar for detection. They operate in a particular band.
Right.
Now, if that band is jammed, then the entire system is useless.
Right.
Once you went for OSA-AK, it was structured predominantly to the attack hepter threat, which Pakistan started getting from
Right. The
different
Cobras.
countries, Cobras,
Yes. Yeah.
absolutely. So it was meant for that. It was operating different band. It was going to attack at the low flying the attack hepters. So the different weapon systems have a different advantages as well.
Right.
But then, as I told you that the guns had a peculiarity and the missiles had peculiarity, and we came for gun missile system to try to optimize the best of both. Similarly, in the inventory also, it may not be appropriate to have a single or only two weapon kind of systems in guns and missiles put together. But of course, it is equally true that the numbers have not to be too many.
Right.
And there should be an optimum balance, a few numbers taking care of all kind of threats, and to be indigenized so that their scaling up and maintenance, the other related challenges can be handled in-house.
So this is basically for redundancy. You're saying it's for better redundancy.
Not redundancy. It is for different kind of threat.
Right.
The threat posed by negligible radar cross section drone is different than incoming missiles, or an another missile firing at the supersonic speed, or an aircraft flying with a very very high speed, or an aircraft dropping the missiles from standoff ranges as high as 250 to 300 400 kilometers. So the different kind of threats require different kind of matching.
Horses for courses.
So, and if you try to get a similar system
Yes.
matched with the highest degree of threat, then again that you will be wasting that kind of resource for the lower kind of things.
Right. Understood. So, while we're talking about guns also, General Kumar, there is the future, which is directed energy weapon systems. How hopeful are you of DWs replacing guns? Do you think it'll replace guns altogether, or will it only augment them?
No, to my mind, it is going to augment it. Firstly, getting the directed energy weapons of capability of having destroying the targets of longer ranges is very, very challenging. The concept is good, but to get that kind of energy to destroy targets at longer ranges, it becomes physically huge challenge, unless we develop the technology, which cannot be ruled out. Like initially we had the nuclear weapons. They were basically for mass destruction. Subsequently, that technology evolved. We started producing electricity. We thereafter further miniaturized, and we are having the nuclear propelled submarines also. And the day is not far off when the nuclear energy will also get utilized to power missiles and other such weapons. Now just imagine if you succeed in that. So is the missile going to have any range restriction? Nil.
The Russians already have
So
that missile.
it and they have said so. I mean that missile.
The Skyfall.
Correct. And but the as a concept, it is possible. It is happening in submarines. It can propel the missiles also. In case it is propelling a missile, then it can go to any amount of range. Any missile can become the ICBM missile, and also any amount of warhead. The weight can be taken. Because the capacity, unlimited range and unlimited warhead capacity, can be handled. Similarly, if that kind of energy somehow tomorrow in whatever time gets utilized in the direct energy weapon, then it will have a major impact. But as of now, what I see in next 5 years or so, it will be in a condition that it will be usable in the field. How much range it is able to destroy, that is something a matter of conjecture. But the smaller drones, they reach quite close, and even if they are destroyed even in a closer proximity, even that is a good enough achievement. So on one hand, we have to have the hard kill in terms of guns and missiles. Then we have to have the soft kills predominantly by the this kind of energy weapons. But also another variation of soft kill is having the electronic warfare means, that is the jammers and this thing where you attack the telemetric link and other links, so that the system becomes non-operational.
Right, absolutely. And Prime Minister Modi announced Mission Sudarshan Chakra from the ramparts of the Red Fort. It's very unusual that the Prime Minister launches, talks about a weapon system or defensive one like this one. What is your understanding of what Sudarshan Chakra will be, with the deadline that is in place? 2035 is what?
Let me say the way threat is manifesting. In my younger days, when we were second lieutenant, so in an air defense regiment, you have certain amount of troops, which are allocated to certain assets. So our resource allocation was basically to the armored regiments, the medium guns, or certain static assets like important bridges or the logistic installations and things like that. But that was a trend, and that was a threat, because the adversary were also trying to target the military targets, and in military target they were trying to target the high-end weapon systems, because it was difficult in those days to replace these weapons easily. In fact, the targeting to even the manpower, infantry battalions deployed was not as much as to these kind of things. But today what you would have seen in Sindoor, and before Sindoor, you would have seen in Russia, Ukraine also. You are seeing it today also. Same thing is happening in Israel, US, Iran conflict, and Lebanon, Gaza, and close home Operation Sindoor. Anything and everything is getting targeted. There is today no distinction between you sitting here getting targeted or a soldier in the field getting targeted. Today, there is no difference whether it is a religious structure or certain hospitals and other this thing which are prohibited to be not hit as per the Red Cross Convention, but adversaries are hitting anything and everything. And therefore, there is a requirement of something like Sudarshan Chakra, where we are able to create a shield all around the entire asset system of the India. And in that, its people are included, the defense forces are included, its infrastructure is included, war fighting potential included, high value assets are including everything, logistic installation, trains, everything is included. Now, how do we do that? Because if you see, Israel is a very small country. They have Iron Dome. And along with that, they have also put two more systems to ensure that they make impregnable air defense. Still, the Iranian missiles, Houthis missiles are breaching and creating damage. Now imagine the geography which India has got and the adversaries like China and Pakistan. Pakistan, we may think small, but Pakistan can be deemed for threat management as good as having anything and everything which is there with China. That happened in Operation Sindoor. Their command and control centers were operated by Chinese. The entire imagery, satellite database, everything was provided by China to Pakistan. The aircraft were provided, missiles were provided, the drones were provided. And these things will happen in future conflict also. They are launching large number of satellites. The submarines are coming. So we should feel, at least plan our capability building based on there is a China on our northern front, and there is a similar mini China on in form of Pakistan also. Now, if this kind of threat is maturing, so we have to have an impregnable shield. We have to put a lot of effort, this thing. We have to go in for passive means also. We have to have survivability also. We have to integrate all kind of weapons. We have to really understand not only the emerging threats are as they are prevalent now. We have to look at how they are going to take shape in future. And based on that, we have to evolve the, whether it is guns, missiles, high power energy, electronic warfare, or newer systems. Because just integrating the current systems, the futuristic threat cannot be handled. So, Sudarshan Chakra as a concept is a very, very good idea. At least if there is a plan, we will be inching towards that. And in case we can achieve that, which is critical for a nation which is planning to be developed nation by 2047 and trying to make its place in the regional as well as international era, that is critical. But there are a huge challenges unless each one of us enters in the mission mode. The timelines may be problematic.
You mean the services who are part of
not services, the
developers,
the DRDO, the private entire sector. Now today there is no difference between the DRDO and the private sector. Okay, so they can compete at par. Today, the all the defense attaches has been given mandate to support the export of Indian manufacturers, irrespective of the category they are. They have the mandate to support the private manufacturers also. So India is looking at not only to meet its own requirement of 3 services or domestic requirement, it is also looking at the friendly foreign countries, their defense exports. It is already exporting items to 80 more countries. It has already started, exporting the bigger things, what is, exporting to Armenia, to Philippines and elsewhere. And when you are exporting, it is not only the actually monetary aspect that, you are trying to make yourself net import free. That is, to my mind, is a minor game. The larger game is that if you have a friend who is having large number of your equipment in the defense domain, that can be trusted. It will enhance your voice in the global arena as well.
Right. So you mentioned the fact that we need to be on mission mode for Sudarshan Chakra. Do you see this as the ultimate embodiment of, say, what organizations like the core of Army AD stand for, which is basically
I think,
coverage?
while the Army air defense is going to play an important role, but Sudarshan Chakra has to go much beyond that. It cannot be completed in the current way, If you see how we have succeeded in the missile development, we have created IGMDP. We have to create that kind of ecosystem with full empowerment without a delay of a day for Sudarshan Chakra in case we want to have this translated. Unless that IGMDP kind of structure is created, people are empowered and everybody is put to in mission mode, and which will be good for everybody. It is not, the services will be benefited, the DRDO will be benefited, defense manufacturers in India will be benefited, everybody will be benefited.
I think that's a very important point you made, General Kumar. The fact that it needs to be done on mission mode, and we see so many very critical defense programs languishing because we don't have that thrust, whether it's the AMCA or the jet engine thing. And I always mention that we should borrow from the ATVP concept, which is our India's nuclear submarine program, where this kind of a thrust was given. You created an organization.
I will give you one example. I'm not very sure about the correctness of its content, which I'm going to speak it now. Now, we detonated nuclear bombs in 1998,
Yes.
followed by the Pakistan. And we had the, most of the countries in the world banning us.
Yes.
That time we were, trying to procure cryogenic engines from USA for our ISRO, for the satellite launches. So there was a total ban. Russia, as always, was our friendly country. So thereafter, we went to Russia to get the cryogenic engine. Russia was keen to give it, but what I have read in the open domain, that it was pressure from USA that we did not get from Russia also. Now, what was done by ISRO? They had one cryogenic engine earlier. So they put a huge, you would have seen in bulk exhibitions, the, tentage which is put in Bangalore, and they dismantled that cryogenic engine and put in all the parts and gave the message to the entire Indian defense manufacturers, you come, pick up what you can make. And today that is a success story. I do not know whether it happened in the form I am narrating, but what I am telling, the intent is that for mission mode, for the things like Sudarshan Chakra to fructify, you have to be in mission mode. You have to go out of box. You have to have a ethos in which the product is superior than the process. See, we have a major challenge in our country that, we follow the British's Whitehall system. Mr. Whitehall, he gave a system where, everything is minuted in the file keeps moving. And then you are not bothered about whether the product is going to come or not.
You're so process driven that you don't,
so
you're not product
the process has
focused.
become more important, and the product has, got on the back burner, which should not be, the case. Of course, I do not say that the process should not exist, but as against the arithmetical process of, up and down, there are stages when you have a collegiate meeting, discuss, decide, and minute, and then move thereafter, forward ahead to ensure that you get your product. And another thing, I think, good thing which, country has adopted is the spiral development of weapons, which may also be a good thing for the components which come in Sudarshan Chakra also. Initially, it was that you make a RFP. Based on that, you float it, whether, you get it, don't get it, and what you get it, that is, how the whole thing was moving. Indian manufacturers were not able to get because we were lagging behind in technology and certain aspects because that was not our priority area for quite some time. But now, because of the indigenization drive and Atmanirbharta drive, country has decided to adopt its own weapon systems. And in own weapon systems adoption, it is willing to accept the product even if it is 70% right.
Right.
So the manufacturer makes a product 70% right. The order is given in limited numbers. The user exploits that, gives the feedback. The other guy improves it to 80%. Again, the more numbers are given, and that's how you reach a thing what you desire. It may take 2-3 years, but the spiral development, you have perfected a technology, a product which is of your own, and which you can scale up in case of conflict to any level which you want. And then your IP is your, design is yours. There's no other challenge with that.
Right. But these are very important points that you've made, General Kumar, and the Sudarshan Chakra needs to be pursued on mission mode, as you said. But give us a sense of what are the kind of threats that we are going to face in the next decade, 2 decades, that make a program like the Sudarshan Chakra so important for India's defense.
So firstly, the spectrum of threat is going to be very, very wide. On one hand, it will be the satellite launched or controlled long-range missiles, a number of them in hyperbolic and supersonic categories, coming from far-off ranges, giving you minimum time of detection. So they have to be responded. You have to have a different kind of systems, for that. Since these missiles, once they are launched, fair number of amount, they'll be quite far off from your borders. So your current radars are not going to detect, when they have launched, which direction they are taking, where they're going to hit, and how do you manage to negate that. So therefore, the satellite capability has to be, happening in a big way.
It has to be integrated to Sudarshan
Not
Chakra.
only integrated, it has to expand. See, we during Kargil war, we were denied GPS support by Americans. Thereafter, we went in for NAVIC. It was an initial effort, but it is still not, met our operational requirement to the extent it is intended to be. We have gone for SBS-3 of 52 satellites, where we have also now given space to the private sector. But we have to go to the range of 7 to 10,000 satellites getting launched, which are not only meeting the requirement of defense forces in totality, are supporting project like Sudarshan Chakra, but also meeting our entire requirement in the country and abroad. It has to be had multiple use, so that its economic viability is possible. So that has to have something there. Then you will have the aircrafts will be having long range missiles of 250 standoff missiles of a much longer distances, 300 kilometers, 400 kilometers. So they will try to launch it there. So you have to have the capability to negate that. You have to have air-launched missiles having higher ranges than what the adversary is possessing. That itself is a challenge. Then thereafter, there's some conventional aircraft will also be used with lesser number of missiles. Again, that you have to be used. So as you keep coming from far to the closer, down to the miniature, and now if you read the literature, the size of the drone is something unimaginable. So how do you detect? And especially our detection system is primarily based on the radar cross section, or some kind of acoustic, some kind of IR, some kind of even passive detections are there. But the moment it starts becoming smaller, the capacity to detect detection goes. If you are not detected, then how will you neutralize that? So there is a huge challenge from the miniature, button size drones to the satellite controlled ICBM kind of threat, which may be launched, and entire spectrum between that. That's why I was recommending that there is no time that the if Sudarshan Chakra has to succeed, we have to do it in the mission mode, the integrated Sudarshan Chakra development program, without any delay. Get all the stakeholders, analyze the threat, and start developing this right from word go.
Right, absolutely. I mean, what a fascinating conversation it has been, General Kumar. We started with air defense and we went up to the future of theater defense and even nationwide defense, which is the Sudarshan Chakra mission, and which, as you correctly mentioned, you need to pursue that on a mission mode. Otherwise, you will not be able to carry out the kind of defense that you did during Operation Sindoor. So you have to take the long-term view of things. But thank you once again.
Thank you very much for rekindling the thoughts and sensitivities, and I'm sure your listeners will be able to put more points, and I'll be happy in the end if the Sudarshan Chakra focus is revitalized in the mission mode, so that we do something good for our country.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, General Kumar.
Okay, Jai Hind.